Before we get started, I have a question for everyone. What's the longest you've gone without speaking with someone you care about, someone you love? A mom, dad, child, parent, an auntie, a guardian, whomever. Hold on to that. It was only a few years ago that I couldn't go for more than an hour without seeing my mom. If I didn't see her for any longer than that, I would find myself at the brink of an anxiety and a panic attack. I missed school. I lost friendships. I shrunk myself. I allowed myself to slowly fade away. It was interesting, though, because I learned that I was living for that exhale. We all know what that's like, moving on for the sake of carrying on so we can get on to the next thing. But I wasn't living. You know, I grew up in a small city north of New York City called Yonkers. And I wanted to be a part of the change in Yonkers. Yonkers is very much like Belfast, like we are here today. Yonkers is seeing rapid transformation, and when I was growing up, I wanted to be a part of that. And so I knew something simply had to change. It was around that time that I learned of this really weird theory, or theory as I call it at least, called the theory of yes. It's the theory and the concept of making yourself vulnerable intentionally, of saying yes when opportunities present themselves. Because, Lord knows, I would say no to everything that came my way. Would I like to grab a coffee? No. Would I like to meet someone? No. I was slowly coming out as gay at that same time, and so did I want to be out? Did I want people to meet me? No. So I wasn't living my full life. Certainly not the life that my mother had wanted for me. And so as part of this theory of yes, I learned my own agency. I learned there's nothing more powerful than saying yes. We all know what that's like. Making yourself vulnerable, an act of your own agency to say, yes, I will commit to it, despite how horrific, how terrifying, how destructive it may feel at that moment. We know that by saying yes, we're committing ourselves to this. And so I embraced that philosophy, and my life changed. I said yes to that, and I had this incredible opportunity to meet the leader of one of the campaigns for mayor of New York City. I said yes to a coffee with him, which turned into a meeting with Hillary Clinton, oddly enough, at the American Museum of Natural History. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I should say that part of my mission, my ethos, was change. I wanted to be one of those folks whose idea, whose policy could help transform my city, where I belong, where I grew up. Because what really frustrated me was that quite often there'd be no one who looked like me in these spaces. And that just wasn't good enough. And that's where I learned the importance of being an advocate. But I knew that by saying no, I wasn't going to get anywhere. And so, again, I continued to say yes. And then randomly, I received a call from the area code 202 one afternoon. Had no idea who it was. And, hello, Mr. Campbell, this is the East Wing. Do you have a moment? I had no idea who this was. I mean, I thought it was kind of a spam call. Lo and behold, it was the office of the First Lady of the United States. Less than 24 hours later, I was on my first ever Advance trip. I had no idea what Advance was. I'd solely been broken into the space by Secretary Clinton and her team and learned that Advance was, for those of you who aren't aware, Advance is the people, we're the folks who arrive at a location days, weeks in advance of our principal. Every country, every government has an Advance team. Every corporation has one. And I had no idea what I was walking into or what I was signing myself up for, quite frankly. To brief a principal and to tell the office of the President of the United States how to act, how to present themselves, what their stage should look like. That was pressure. So I went from zero to no to yes. And so, of course, I continued to say yes. I ended up on my first flight of my life, which happened to be Detroit, Michigan. As I said, I'm a New Yorker, so we're not the best drivers, but I ended up driving around Detroit less than 24 hours after. And then a week later, I said yes again, ended up in Colorado. said yes again, ended up in Miami, said yes again, and ended up in Tokyo. I say that because I simply said yes. I allowed myself to intentionally be vulnerable. And I say that especially to the folks in this room, the students, the young folks, those looking to pivot their careers and change their lives. I learned something more important than I think saying yes, called CBU, comfortable being uncomfortable. I can only imagine how awkward and terrifying it is to be a child from a very small, very low-income family in Yonkers, having my fanciest of suits that I could put together, standing on the tarmac in Tokyo as the First Lady of the United States steps down, and my job is to make sure that things are going smoothly and that we're going according to schedule. I could never do that. I couldn't do that until I embraced this idea of being vulnerable, this idea of being uncomfortable. I relish in it now. Because what's the worst that can happen in most cases? But CBU, comfortable being uncomfortable. There is power in being vulnerable. There is power in allowing ourselves to shift. It isn't passive. It is an intentional, active act of consciousness where we are deciding that we are going to take a step. Life is far too short not to. I'm standing here 3,000 miles away from home. I haven't seen my mother, who I couldn't see for more than an hour, or could not see her for more than an hour just a few years ago. And I haven't seen her. This Christmas will be my third not having seen her. But don't fret, I'm going to my favorite place, Carnation Street, because that really got me flying in the first place, quite frankly, on my own. And so what I do now every Christmas, I go to Manchester, and I phone my mom from a street right off Canal Street, and we talk about the fact that I'm here. But I'm here because I said yes. I'm here because I learned that I relished being comfortable in spaces that make me feel uncomfortable. And so again, we all know what that feels like, that angst, that feeling that's telling you to freeze, to run, to hold, to isolate, to break away from the world. But I implore you, please, say yes. Become comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you're like me, you might get to see Carnation Street 3 times. Thank you for listening.